Hello, everyone. I am going to be reviewing Halsey's fifth studio album, The Great Impersonator. I know I am a couple weeks late on this. I wasn't originally going to film a review for this project, but I was very impressed by it when I listened to it. And also, there's been because of the response from a certain publication, which I think will obviously be at the forefront of many Halsey fans' minds when talking about this record. Yes, I am talking about Pitchfork, the scam site that's run from a basement, as Halsey so aptly pointed out in that tweet. The discourse around that review, as well as another notable critic on YouTube, I will not name his name, but I think we all know who I am referring to, made me feel compelled to share my thoughts on this project. Because I will preface this by saying I would never have really considered myself a serious Halsey fan. I've always been aware of her work, and I've always liked some of the songs, most of them being the more pop radio singles. Without Me was kind of everywhere and was a really catchy tune. Shout out to Badlands. I think that's, got some incredible bangers. Haunting is one of my favorite songs of hers. But going into this record, I wasn't exactly expecting something that was going to blow me away sonically. Because I've always been like a little bit not quite understanding like not really getting the hype. I'm going to be completely honest with you. And I've seen a lot of Halsey fans say that they are still kind of disappointed by The Great Impersonator, that it is not up to the quality of her other projects. To which I would disagree, because this album for me, again, it's subjective, it's different for everyone else. This album for me made me fully tune in. I was like, from the very beginning, the very first song, for once I felt like Halsey was really truly pouring out her pen in a way that I felt was not being obscured by what I would consider to be somewhat muddy production, over the top production. But I mean, that it has its moments, it has its benefit. But I think that where this album differs from the rest of her records is that this is not at all trying to be radio friendly. This is not at all trying to chase any specific kind of EDM trend, dance trend, hip hop trend. This album is extremely, folksy, indie rock, alternative, very stripped back, very acoustic at parts. This is a singer-songwriter project. And so my ear's a little bit more tuned in. And so because of the lyrical content particularly, but also the melodic content, I am really impressed with some of the melodic content on this record and how well it's done. I will say that, first of all, the concept, when we started to find out more about what this album meant as The Great Impersonator, and she started counting down each day with a new photo shoot showing her cosplaying as these different artists from the 1970s to today, I was like, regardless of whether the music hits, this is a phenomenal concept. It made me kind of wish that I could do something like this. I was very impressed by, and I was looking forward to seeing, which artists were going to have homage paid to. And overall, we have 18 songs, so we've got 18 artists who get a shout out, which I think is really cool, including herself, because of course, one of the songs is a reference to her first album. But then I learned about what Halsey's been going through. Halsey has been diagnosed in the last couple years with lupus, as well as a T cell lymphoproliferative disorder. I was under the impression that she had been diagnosed with cancer, but upon looking into this, it seems like it was more of an immunodisorder that she was struggling with on top of the lupus. And it got very, very difficult for her in the last few years battling this illness. And of course, she also had a child. So the lyrics are very much reflecting on the experiences that the harrowing experiences, the dark experiences, the dark thoughts that one has when they are going through what, for all they know, could be a terminal illness. Halsey talked about how that she thought this might have been her last record, and when she was writing it, that was kind of the sincerity that was coming through. And there's a directness to that, I'm hopeful, of course, this is not her last project, but, there's a refreshing kind of quality there. Makes it really feel like, okay, we've got to really pay attention here. And maybe also because I'm just a little tired of hearing lyrics about relationships. I'm always a little bit more interested in songs that are talking about something more in another kind of area. And of course, relationships do come up. She is now with Avon Jogia from Victorious, and it sounds like they are a really great couple. I think that's a really interesting pairing. But she has had, through her diagnosis, she has had to struggle with exes not being able to take care of her in the way that she needs. It brings up a lot of questions, and many of these songs, on songs particularly like Dog Years and one of the most devastating, Life of the Spider. Would you really love me if I was truly ill, truly frail, no longer able to crack a joke or smile, where you'd have to take care of me? And it's a hard-hitting, poignant statement that all of us have to consider when we get into a relationship. It could be any one of us, in that position, and it really tests any relationship. So I think it really, makes you reassess when you're thinking about falling in love with someone. It makes you really reassess those things and think about, gosh, I need to take this, and more importantly, they need to take this that seriously. We need to, be in this relationship for each other in sickness and in health. So what I was just absolutely floored by was this Pitchfork critic seeming to belittle her illness and her disease, and almost insinuate that she is using it as a way to guilt trip the audience. It was a very cynical and uncalled for kind of personal attack that didn't feel at all professional. It didn't feel at all like it was actually engaging with the material, and that it was just picking and choosing certain lines and trying to spin a narrative. Obviously, Halsey has come for Pitchfork in the past, and so I can't help but feel that there is some vindictiveness on the side of the publication, which is really, really a shame because I've always side-eyed Pitchfork. I think that they are too high on their own supply. I think that they really make one not like hipsters. I think hipsters can. I know that's kind of a passé kind of cultural phenomena, but the hipster, they can be insufferable. They really can. They never appreciate, anything that's more accessible, that's more, digestible. And I often find there's some covert misogyny that comes across when they talk about, particularly these hipster critics, talk about female musicians' bodies of work. How dare they be so candid and personal? How dare they make me feel as the listener like, I should be relating to some sort of thing I can't relate to? Well, you know what? Maybe that's not for you. And, you need to separate yourself from that in reviewing the project and be more objective. Because this album isn't going to be for everyone. Not everyone is going to enjoy it. Not everyone is going to want to listen to such a sad project. I mean, it is a heavy and dark album, subject matter wise. And so that is going to be hard to listen to for some people. There's one song, like I said, Life of the Spider is called a draft because Halsey stated that she didn't feel she could ever record the song again in a proper fashion, and so left it in a demo state. That's how painful, reliving those experiences of being at some of her lowest in her illness. That's how painful it is to transmute into art, even though it is such an important process for artists to do. And so I am absolutely floored by the gall of Pitchfork to publish such a piece. And again, this also is in line with that critic who I will not mention, but we all know who I'm talking about on YouTube, was a very, very, very highly subscribed channel. Picking apart, Halsey's right to at all place herself in some sort of victim position, as if that is some sort of taboo. When you go through something like this, you have a right to write about it, and you have a right to feel a little bad for yourself, okay? This is what art is for. And I don't even think, I don't know, not even every song is about her disease, and yet this topic, it's really upsetting. I just am absolutely floored to have, these critics, noticeably all male, just completely trivialize what she's gone through and spin this sort of narrative of how dare, she write about what she's gone through in such an honest way. And it might not be relatable, but that's okay. I think it's relatable for most people who have gone through any form of depression or any sort of illness of some kind and who is a mother in the midst of it. Do I think that, there are potentially areas for improvement in songwriting? There always will be. But I find the overall sentiment here to be just really insulting. And I mean the entire internet came for this critic and is jumping on Halsey's defense. And I love how she, tried to spin it in a positive way, take certain quotes, just like they have been doing from her music, and take it out of context to sort of give it a positive spin. It's so wonderful that everyone has a different reaction to my music. Of course, it is subjective. And of course, I think in the sonic department, that's where criticism is a little more valid. Some people may not be so into the genre of music she's playing with here. There's, like I said, a lot of alt indie rock stuff, which isn't really something Halsey's always been more of an EDM artist. So this is definitely a bit of a departure for her. But for me, it's a little bit more welcome because I found some of, like I said, the production on a lot of the more kind of electronic songs of hers to be a bit of a miss. So each song is impersonating a different famous artist, usually a musician. Although in the first case, it is Marilyn Monroe. Only living girl in LA. I'm the only girl alive in LA County. I'm the only girl alive in New York City. My special talent isn't writing, it's not singing. It's feeling everything that everyone alive feels every day. I think all empaths felt that very strongly. Sometimes we don't necessarily know how to transmute all of that, sensitive emotional energy that we feel from around us. It's going to be so overwhelming. So many of these songs, of course, are pontificating about what Halsey's impact might be, what any artist's impact might be if they were to die young. Unfortunately, we have a recent tragedy in the death of Liam Payne. And it's particularly timely, I think, to kind of call attention to this. The Liam Payne tragedy was so shocking to me and to so many that it really does, make you question legacy. And it really does make you question your place in the world. I think I'm special because I cut myself wide open as if it's honorable to bleed. But I'm not lucky and I know I wasn't chosen. The world keeps spinning without me. It can be very freeing to decentralize yourself from your perspective and feel small and insignificant, but also so terrifying at the same time, existentially. And clearly that's something Halsey's grappling with on this song and on so many of them. Track number 2, Ego, has a alt-rock pulse of Dolores O'Riordan of the Cranberries, the late Dolores O'Riordan. I think that I should try to kill my ego, because if I don't, my ego might kill me. Song is somewhat autobiographical, reflecting on feeling like an outcast and overcompensating because of it in the early days of her career, pretending to be happy when she is really not as happy as she seems. Want to be invited, but I won't attend to the parties. I've been having bad dreams my career would end because I slip up when I should have played pretend. Turned 18 and I left the city, said I want to be cool, I don't want to be pretty. The voices all came crashing down and said, you're too nice to run this town. Am I cut out for LA? You really have to have such an inflated sense of yourself, but at the same time, you need to be aware of your decisions and how things can be interpreted so that you don't make a mistake and fall from grace like so many stars have been, by the press, vilified. It's a tightrope that is so hard to walk. Dog Years is inspired by PJ Harvey and has some devastating lyrics about, comparing yourself to being seriously old if you were considered a dog. At the age of what, 28 when she's writing this? She is 196 in Dog Years. I'm not old, but I am tired. They said I have a universal blood type and I can give to anyone in need, but only receive from someone exactly like me. And I'm trying to be positive, but oh, it's really hard. There's a pun there about blood types. I'm a loner, I'm a loser. Won't you shoot me in the yard? Put me down like a lame horse? Or send me to the farm where all the dogs go? I mean, I think she did lose a pet dog in this time frame, and that kind of seeped into her subconscious, that seeped into this metaphor. Am I of any use to you anymore? I'm too old, I'm too lame, I'm too much of a burden to take care of. I can barely take care of myself. I think this is something that anyone who's going through chronic illness, serious illness, is constantly battling in their mind. They do sort of feel reduced to, they've lost so much of their agency that they feel almost like they are a pet. A pet is so dependent upon its owner to feed it and take care of it. When you lose so much of your own agency, you do sort of feel like your caregiver is your owner, and you start to really wonder: is it worth all of the work that you're putting them through to keep you alive? It was such a heavy, heavy thing, but I think that's what she's getting at here. That's the subtext. We have three songs called Letter to God. The first is 1974, and this is supposed to be an allusion or an homage to Cher. The second is 1983, an homage to Bruce Springsteen. And the third is an homage, it's 1998, to Aaliyah. Now, I'll be honest with you, particularly with the latter, I do not really hear any sort of sonic semblance of Aaliyah in Letter to God 1998 whatsoever. There is no R&B, energy to this song. But I do think where she was coming from in writing these songs was about the lyrical content, putting herself in the position of these artists saying this prayer, asking for help going through this difficult illness, but also being a mother. Particularly in the third, she talks a lot about, I want to stay with my little baby boy. I don't ever want to leave him, but I don't think it's my choice, meaning she doesn't know if she's going to be able to stay there for him. So I'm basking in these moments when I feel a shred of joy, but I don't think my pleas are heard because I'm screaming in the void. I mean, it's such a dark, bitter cry for help in all of these interludes. On Panic Attack, we lighten up a little bit in talking a little bit more about love. Is this love or a panic attack? I can't tell. I think that's a sentiment that anyone who's kind of gone through the flutters is wondering. This is a Stevie Nicks tribute. I think out of all of the impersonations sonically, this is the most precise. This is the one that sounds so much like Stevie Nicks could have written and sung. The background, the instrumentals. Also on The End, which is a folk ballad, which was actually the first song to be released from this album, is a Joni Mitchell tribute. This song is a little more languid. It's lacking a little bit of a flair for me that Joni Mitchell tended to have with some of her songwriting, but in the melody of it. But it's hypothesizing about being, at the end of the world with your partner and asking that partner very candidly, would you be there for me? Would you hold me? Would you be the last thing we saw of each other? Or would you leave? I Believe in Magic, a tribute to Linda Ronstadt. Not my favorite song on the record sonically. I think it's one of the more forgettable ones melodically. It's a song where she's reflecting, looking at her boy growing up and how quickly it's happening, and then also how her mother is getting older. And the aging process is hard to watch when you're, watching as a child your own mother age, when you're watching your own child age, because every year that passes for me passes her 100-fold. Hometown is a Summer Breeze, Dolly Parton tribute, singing about, the golden years of being 17 and nostalgia, going back to her hometown, even though she knows she probably never would today. I think there was someone who sadly passed away young that she's referring to as Davies running for a touchdown. The crowd in heaven is waving from the field. So she's remembering someone I think that she was close to. There's, musings about the American dream, and it definitely has a Dolly Parton flair, although I think it crosses over a little bit more into, I would consider, mainstream pop country territory compared to the more, slightly like bluegrassy, kind of folksy elements of Dolly Parton from the 60s and 70s. I would say this sounds a little bit more like something Kelsey Ballerini would put out. It's just a little more modern in its country pop production. I Never Loved You is the Kate Bush tribute. I will say I was very disappointed sonically. I did not hear anything really Kate Bushian in the instrumental, in the production, in the way she's even singing, the delivery. I mean, I guess I can sort of come up with some way of being like, now that I know it's the Kate Bush song, I can be like, that maybe could sound like Kate Bush. But the song needs to have a little bit more 80s backbeat to it for me to really feel that, or just be pure piano, which it isn't either. But this is a song about undergoing surgery, and about a woman, who could be her, that she's kind of imagining herself in this position, um, hoping that her partner will come and show up in time to say goodbye to her, but getting more and more afraid that he's going to be too late. Darwinism, it's interesting that she says this is David Bowie because I don't hear it, but I'm also not the hugest David Bowie savant. So I wouldn't necessarily know. I wouldn't have the, musical history to back that up. But I did see one reviewer point out the Radiohead influence. And I do think that in the kind of eeriness of the melody, the sparseness of the production, it screams and oozes Radiohead. What if I'm just cosmic dust? Put me in a metal box that's bound to rust. Shoot me into space and leave me to combust. Return to Earth and just dissolve into its crust. While I was born all by myself, it's not unlikely that I'll die that way as well. Very existential, pontificating about using, evolution as a metaphor for finding love, being a fish out of the pond, crawling your way onto land, looking for someone. Lonely is the Muse is the heavier rock Evanescence tribute song, and I do hear it, especially in the low whisper that she adds to the underbelly of her vocals. It's very Amy Lee. I could see why some Halsey fans would not find this song sonically to be up their alley, or that some people might find it kind of derivative of like sort of My Chemical Romance, Hot Topic-esque rock music. But I like it. I like melodic heavy rock when it's, done by a female vocalist who can command your attention. I always knew I was a martyr and that Jesus was one too, but I was built from different pieces that I learned how to unscrew. And I can always reassemble to fit perfectly for you or anybody that decides that I'm of use. So Pitchfork really picked her apart for this one, talking about how she is claiming that, she's used as fodder by her exes for, vindictive songwriting. But she's done the same herself. Like Without Me was a diss at G-Eazy. G-Eazy has made songs about her. Look, I'm not that versed in that kind of, tit for tat kind of songwriting that's been going on between her and her exes. I haven't been following Halsey and G-Eazy and that drama, but I still question why Pitchfork is trying to undermine any instance where Halsey is allowed to have some sort of vulnerability. Again, they're sort of asking, why they're claiming that she doesn't have any self-awareness. But I think the reviewer is lacking quite a bit of self-awareness in thinking about this so singularly or in such a jaded way. Even though Halsey has had success clapping back, even though she has, earned platinum airline status. I mean, this is a conversation we're having with Chappell Roan. Fame does not necessarily bring comfort. And so, I'm reduced to just a body here in someone else's bed. I see that as, the way the misogynistic press and publicity around, public breakups, the way some certain male songwriters will write about exes, particularly in certain genres. Yeah, it tracks for me. It tracks for me. I don't see it as something, inauthentic or stretch of the imagination. It's not a stretch of the imagination for me. Arsonist is probably my favorite on the record. It has the Fiona Apple touch. I do think, some people would have expected a Fiona Apple track to be more strict piano balladry. And yeah, that might have been what I would have initially thought too. But there is something about the, kind of icy, methodical kind of rhythm of the song that is reminiscent of Fiona. And of course, the the interconversational style of the lyrics, the second guessing, the the eloquent vocabulary. It very much it feels in that spirit. Arsonist burning down the world to feel its heat. The arsonist doesn't feel the embers on his feet. So true. And when you are your own worst enemy, when you're feeling like, vindictive rage is taking over, or when someone is doing that to you, you become desensitized to the ways in which you're actually hurting yourself and those around you. And also sometimes you just want to feel something, even if it's bringing you pain. And that can allude to, people who have issues with self-harm. And so that is an undercurrent here. A chilling track, a very chilling track, very ominous. We move into Life of the Spider. This is the, the nadir of the record. This is the lowest point. Look at the lyrics and you automatically get the picture she's painting with a, I don't think too heavy-handed metaphor that is very apt. I'm a spider in your sink, in your bathroom. Kind of not really wanting, I'm not wanted. You may kill me at any point. It's entirely, your choice. How dare I exist or try to be alive? I'm just legs and eyes, and I just am sick, and I'm in this bathroom. I mean, it's one of the hardest hitting sets of lyrics I've come across in quite some time. So this song alone kind of makes this album so it's in its own world for me in terms of what Halsey's put out, because nothing, I don't know, when you go through something so heavy like that, and anyone who's anyone who's gone through not just illness but depression can relate to, it becomes so bonded to you that you can't help but have an affinity for it, even if you're not as much of a fan of the sonic composition or something like that. This is this is inspired by Tori Amos, and Tori Amos is known for very unapologetic, honest songwriting, and usually at the piano as well, which this is. What a heavy song. Then we move on to Hurt Feelings. Not as big a fan of this one sonically. Again, sort of like I Believe in Magic. It's one of the more forgettable ones for me. I can't, the memory doesn't lodge itself. And this is, again, a little bit more autobiographical, talking about her relationship to her father. We have Lucky, which is a Britney Spears tribute. And this is one of the only times I think she actually samples an actual song by the artist. So it's unmistakably that artist. So it sounds like Britney Spears because she's singing a Britney Spears song, one of my favorites of hers, which is, of course, Lucky from 2000, riffing on the same sentiment of the Chapel Roan conversation that we've been having. She's so lucky she's a star, but she cries in her lonely heart thinking, oh, what a brilliant pop hook. Max Martin. Did Max Martin do that one? He might have. And I love the sort of the summery guitar that backbones it. When I die, I won't have time to spend my money, but I hope that you still love me. And finally, we have The Great Impersonator, which channels one of my all-time faves, the inimitable Björk. Now, I will say, it's quite a tall order to impersonate Björk, and it can definitely come across too easily as parody. So many, comedians and musicians have tried to imitate Björk's vocal and her voice. I'm glad that Halsey didn't go too far into that. However, there are these which were jarring. I will say it just did not feel congruent at all with Halsey's abilities as a singer. However, I've grown used to it, and I'm now, the disjointed, like kind of, off kilter way of singing, the sing songy kind of tone to it is very Björkian. However, the I did see one reviewer allude to the staccato strings is sounding much more reminiscent of Enya, and I hear that as well. I would have loved to have seen her pay tribute to Enya, but you can hear her putting on a little bit of an Icelandic accent at points when she sings the pre-chorus. I'm like, okay, Halsey, like again, like we want to make sure I think what's so brilliant about this record is that it could have been so, in your face with the impersonations. I mean, on the one hand, there are some songs where I'm sort of scratching my head and I'm like, I don't really hear Kate Bush in this. But then sometimes I think it's more about the songwriting, maybe imitating like the lyrical content than it is about, the overall the instrumentals and the, vocal delivery. And I also think it's actually for the best that she didn't go for clear, in person, like very clear cut impersonations of all these artists, because that cheapens it a little bit. There needs to be a little more depth there needs to be a little more depth to this exercise than just listen to how I can sing like this different singer, because that's purely a technique that, on its own is interesting, but if there's not more to it, I can sort of see where the Pitchfork review would be right in saying there's not much more to say about a project like this, that it's very shallow and superficial. This project does not feel shallow and superficial at all, even though it has this veneer of, wearing these different masks. If you dive beneath it, it's a brilliant way of her kind of dissecting and analyzing her experiences and writing. It's flexing her songwriting skills and music making skills in a way that, allows her to kind of reassess who she is as an artist. And some might say, well, where is Halsey in all of this? This is just channeling I feel Halsey in all of these songs. In every single song, she sounds like herself, except for The Great Impersonator, which, again, that's the title song. So maybe it makes sense that she put on a little bit more of a facade. But I hear Halsey beneath all of this. This still feels like a Halsey record, although sonically it is very different. Like I said, much more in the rock alternative indie space than it is in the pop electronic space. But I am 100% here for it. And so I think that this is a triumph of a record. It's one of the strongest albums released this year, and it is by far her most interesting record that she has put out. However, this is also the only Halsey record that I have listened to from start to finish. All of her other records, I've sort of cherry picked and picked the songs that sounded the best and listened to those a lot. So I will acknowledge that. Like, I'm fully aware that I am not like as versed in Halsey's music as I should be. But I don't know. This to me is something that is audacious, bold, and very important in sort of being an authentic artist and just being honest about your experiences. It's something that I hope no one ever feels, especially given the criticism that might get hurled at them, that is something they should be afraid to do, because that is what being an artist and a songwriter is about. What else is it for but to process and mine your own struggles and lay that out on the page? So I don't know what these people are getting all writing all sorts of things. Like I said, it feels very vindictive and unfair and personal, and it's very disheartening. But I felt like to counteract that, I needed to share my own thoughts here. What are your thoughts on the record? What are your favorites? My highlights would be Darwinism, The Arsonist. Those are my two favorites, just overall, sonically in particular. Panic Attack, The Great Impersonator, Ego, Lonely as the Muse, Lucky. Gosh, I mean, those are the ones that stand out to me the most, sonically. But I do have a lot of respect for Dog Years, for The Only Girl Living in LA. I mean, so many of these, Life of a Spider, even though I wouldn't be able to listen to that song very often, because that's too heavy, even for me. But this is an album that I think is going to be considered a classic in its own way going forward. I hope so. I see most Halsey fans very warmly receiving it, and that's good to see because it's bucking trends, and that's really interesting. And also those photo shoots, pretty cool. I was very excited to see her, sort of dress up. It was a kind of cool Halloween costume idea as a concept as well. So let me know your favorites, your thoughts. Do you disagree? Do you agree? Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful, blessed day. Peace, love, and light. Bye.